Thomas Aquinas' third way to prove the existence of God is unique to the Summa Theologiae, and it contains certain intricacies that are difficult to interpret. But St. Thomas runs substantially the same argument in a much simpler form in another one of his great works called the Summa contra Gentiles. Let's take a look now at the alternative version of the argument from possible being. In the Summa Theologiae, the third way begins from the observation that some things generate and corrupt. That is, they begin to exist and cease to exist. Since they begin to exist and cease to exist, they're the sort of thing that can be and can not be. Thomas Aquinas calls beings that are able to be and able not to be by the name of possible beings. Cats and dogs and flowers and blades of grass are all examples of possible beings. In the alternative version of the argument, in the Summa contra Gentiles, Book 1, Chapter 15, the starting point of the argument is the same. Aquinas says simply, we find in the world beings that are subject to generation and corruption, which can be and not be. After making that observation, the reasoning of the third way, in the Summa Theologiae, proceeds in one way, and the reasoning of the argument in the Summa contra Gentiles proceeds in another way. The third way first claims that possible beings are of limited duration, and it is impossible for the totality of all beings to be possible beings. It is the reasoning involved in this phase of the third way that is difficult and leaves many people wondering just what the argument is and whether it works. In the alternative version of the argument in the Summa contra Gentiles, however, after observing that some beings are possible beings, Aquinas does not even mention the duration of possible beings or claim that it is impossible for all beings to be possible beings. Rather, he reasons along different lines. First, he says, possible beings need a cause of their very being. Let us pause with the point and clarify what he means. St. Thomas is not saying here that whatever begins to exist has a cause of its coming to be. He knows of that principle and uses it elsewhere in his writings, but he is not appealing to it here. Instead of claiming that possible beings need a cause of their becoming, he says they need a cause of their being. The distinction between a cause of becoming and a cause of being is not easy for many people to grasp. But St. Thomas thinks the two sorts of causes are distinct. What accounts for a chandelier beginning to hang in a certain place is one thing. It is the person who hung it there to begin with. What accounts for the chandelier actually hanging there now is another set of factors: the chain, the fastening in the ceiling, the force of gravity, and more. What Thomas is claiming is not that possible beings need a cause of their coming to be, but a cause of their being. Why does he say so? He does not think the claim is self-evident. Rather, he gives a very brief argument for it. He says that possible beings are related equally to being and not being. And whatever is related equally to being and not being must owe its very being to some cause. He puts it slightly differently in Summa contra Gentiles, Book 2, Chapter 15. There he says, a possible being considered in itself is indifferent to being and not being. So something else must determine it to one. Perhaps the easiest way to understand his brief supporting argument is this: the natures or essences of possible beings do not account for, explain, or guarantee their existence. What a dog is does not explain why this or that dog is. What a flower is does not account for why this or that flower is. And so on for all beings other than God. It belongs to their nature or essence to go either way, either to be or not be. So something else must account for their being. We will take a closer look at this issue, whether possible beings need a cause of their very being, in another video. Once Aquinas has pointed out that there are possible beings and laid down the claim that possible beings need a cause of their very being, the argument continues as follows. It is impossible to proceed to infinity in a series of possible beings, each of which is caused to be by another possible being. If one possible being, A, exists because of another possible being, B, and B exists because of another possible being, C, and C exists because of another possible being, D, and if the series simply continues to infinity, then the very thing to be explained simply multiplies a number, but is never actually explained. The very thing to be explained is the existence of possible beings. And simply multiplying the number of possible beings, even multiplying them to infinity, does not explain why any one of them exists at all. Rather, what is needed is something different in kind, namely, a necessary being. Aquinas concludes, therefore, there must be a necessary being. When we turn to consider necessary beings, however, we run into basically the same issue. Let us recall that for Aquinas, a necessary being is basically a permanent being, something that always has been and always will be, something everlasting. Aristotle thought the stars, for example, were permanent or everlasting beings. St. Thomas, however, realized that even if we granted that point to Aristotle, one might still ask why such beings exist permanently or everlastingly. What is it that accounts for or explains their permanent or everlasting existence? The answer is either because of something in their very nature, or essence, or something outside their very nature, or essence. If one says the former, that necessary beings exist by their nature, or essence, then one is actually conceding the conclusion of the argument overall. There exists a being necessary through itself. Its very nature, or essence, is to be. If, however, one says that such necessary beings exist because of something outside of them, then we have another regress of causes on our hands. One necessary being, A, exists because of another necessary being, B, and B exists because of another necessary being, C, and so on. But it is impossible to proceed to infinity in a series of necessary beings that exist because of other necessary beings. Everything in the series is something to be explained, and simply multiplying the number of things to be explained does not actually explain them. So in the end, there must exist another sort of necessary being than those caused to be necessary, permanent, or everlasting. There must be a being that is necessary by its very nature or essence. This being exists by definition, rather than by reception of its existence from another. And from this being, other beings receive their very being. In this way, Aquinas has arrived at substantially the same conclusion as the third way of the Summa Theologiae, but by reasoning along different lines. For readings, podcasts, and more videos like this, go to Aquinas101.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for one of our free video courses on Aquinas. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with your friends, because it matters what you think.